Prospect Show with Rahim Fun, and I am reviewing Backrooms. And yes, believe the hype. This is one of the best movies of the year. A round of applause to Kane Parsons and Will Sudik, the writer, for coming up with one of the most inventive, original, um, what is this, like a science fiction, psychological drama, horror mystery movie of the year. Really, really worth the hype. And while I'm often wary of films that do get such accolades and applause, I think this film, for many reasons, is deserving of our attention. And if you haven't already seen the movie, please go to the cinemas right now. Because, and again, to save you guys from watching the entire review, you'll ask me, should you watch it in the cinema, should you stream it, or should you skip it? So, of course, you can't stream it at the moment, and it's definitely not a movie worth skipping. Cinema, cinema, cinema. Um, I think it's sort of almost enhanced by the cinematic experience because when you're there in the cinema, hopefully half empty, but you're not going to have that considering the amount of money this movie has made. I mean, of a budget of just $10 million, it's made 230 million. I mean, bravo. This is, I think, one of the best opening A24 movies. And for anyone who didn't jump on the Kane Parsons bandwagon, any of the studios who maybe were interested, because apparently a number of studios did approach him after he had put out his Backrooms work on the net, which I had no idea about. I think A24 really lucked out because, again, man, the math. And then this is what, like, it's first or second week almost, and that's 230 million off of a budget of just $10 million. Amazing, amazing. So, as I said, whenever you do have a movie like this that tends to be a critical darling, I'm wary because the thing is that critics can get it wrong, right? But in this case, I think the box office numbers prove it. The critics and their unanimous praise also prove it. And then my own personal experience sitting there watching the movie in, as I said, a cinema. I think that sort of that experience is enhanced because considering the premise of this, impossible architecture, liminal spaces, abandoned strip malls, abandoned offices. I think I may be exaggerating this a bit, but can you imagine watching this movie at IMAX? It would just ratchet up that tension, the cortisol, all of those things of just watching this pale yellow infinity that are the Backrooms. Okay, starring, and I always mispronounce this man's name, although I love the actor, Chiwetel, Ejiofor, and I'm forgetting this Norwegian actress's name, Renate. I can't even pronounce it either. She's great. She was great in Sentimental Things. That movie, yeah, whatever. The movie starts off with failing businessman Clark, who runs the Ottoman Empire, Captain Clark's Ottoman Empire, which is in a strip mall. He's a failed or a frustrated architect, a failed marriage, and also a failing business. And one fine day, while sort of trying to figure out where all of his electricity is being diverted to, he comes across this tortillons, this imperceptible portal in a wall. And he crosses over into the back rooms, which increasingly become weirder. I mean, we get hints at what we might expect from the initial found footage scenes, but then also in this man's doodlings and his flights of fancy, and that you have these sketches of like this impossible architecture, this architecture that is beyond wacky, that sort of shouldn't exist, that to human perception, to human understanding, is there, is meant to make sense, but it doesn't. And I'll touch upon this a little further as we go on. Um, and we get our first taste of what to expect from this place. And so, curious perhaps, driven by curiosity, driven by, I guess, the lack of life that he may have on the outside, he delves further and he explores. We also have the character of this lady who plays his therapist, who has her own baggage, living with a shut-in older mother, at least while growing up. Uh, she has now turned, or at least, blossomed into a therapist who is trying to help other people discover and sort of maybe open doorways literally into new selves. That's at least the basic premise of this movie. And I don't think I need to get into it any further simply because there are no grand resolutions or closure or reveals in this movie, which I can understand is a trope that we've seen where a lot of the times we leave things, not we, filmmakers leave things to be purposefully obscure so that perhaps we derive our own meanings. And I kid you not, while watching this film, the gears were already turning because I was experiencing so much. I was experiencing at once by looking at this space, how, these back rooms, how they were, how they tap into this almost, and I get it because, he is a 20-year-old. He didn't experience the 90s, how these are sort of this almost flawed remembering, and keep that phrase in mind because it does go on to explain something else. This almost cliched memory of what the 90s look and feel like. And we see that in sort of the kind of dag clothes that Clark wears, the puffy shirts, the white sneakers, the padded shoulder blazers the therapist wears. But then also in sort of this comment on suburban America and modernity and the strip mall and its endless uniformity, but then also its hollowness and this emptiness. I mean, there's so much meaning to derive from it. And I mean, you never look at pale yellow carpeting and wallpaper ever the same again. And I have to tip my hat to the filmmaker, of course. We'll get to him a little more in a bit. But then the producers for not going CGI with this movie. The sets are built. And I think it's almost 30,000 square feet of sets that were built. If I'm mistaken, please forgive me. But I love that. I love how, while I would really have liked them to put like a bit of a grain on the footage, on the film to make it look even more 90s, but I just love how these are actual sets. It's experiential for both us, the audience, but then also the actors, because they are working in an actual space. I love that about this movie. There are spoilers in this review, so I mean, sort of, if you stuck around until now and you haven't seen the movie yet, then I would suggest you go and watch the movie and then return for the latter half of this review. Okay. While watching this film, I couldn't help but feel certain overlaps. Sorry, this thing gave me a bit of an electric shock, which is weird. For us, the design. Okay, certain overlaps, not even overlaps, certain kinship with a lot of things. Like, for example, again, when you look at these back rooms, how do you not see a lot of the aesthetic of a show like Severance, which again taps into the blandness and I think sort of the banality. We often talk about sort of the banality of evil, the banality of this sort of these workspaces that have turned into almost something insidious. How in understanding these spaces and also the beings that it kind of generates, how there are a lot of shades of a film like, and the book, of course, Annihilation, but then also tapping into this Lovecraftian otherness of, and this is at least my understanding of what these rooms are, in that it is a entity or a sentience that exists as like a extra dimensional space or even a pocket universe that in interacting with its visitors creates spaces that exist in their mind, but then creates imperfect versions of those. And they use this sort of metaphor, if you will, in the movie twice. And this is really quite telling in that how do you explain a dog to somebody who's never seen one? So how would you explain spaces, human beings, to a being or an entity or an intelligence that has never experienced? That I think is really this sort of genius part about the movie, which I absolutely love. And again, the very fact that during the movie, but then even after, because I'd gone with a friend, we were sort of talking about it. What is it? I just love that about this film. It makes you think. And while it's not conventionally like a horror movie or a science fiction, it borrows definitely from all of these elements. I think one or two detractions I may have. One is the found footage stuff that they have in it, where I don't think there's any need to have it. Like in the opening, sure, I get it. It kind of explains the role of the organization that's kind of involved in observing all of this stuff. But we don't need it in the film itself. There's only one scene, and another spoiler, where I think it is used to perfect effect, in which Clark is again lost. He experiences like a nightmare Christmas scene and these weird bathrooms and all of this shit. And he comes across this tiled pool area, and his assistant is kind of calling out to him. He's trying to find her, and he places the camera on a table, and there he is trying to find her at a distance. And then something comes and picks up the camera and observes it. Wow. Makes your skin crawl. I am so glad that a movie like this does exist because this flies totally in the face of conventional Hollywood. It's like it's like a fuck you to Hollywood, because here is a studio that rolled the dice on a web series that was created by a high school student. They then entrusted that very same high school student, who I think while filming this was around 18, 19, he's now 20, with this movie. Now, that is a really big gamble. That is something that I don't know. I mean, sort of, as much as I value and champion independent cinema, I don't think even I would have sort of gone ahead with this guy, because this is his first time movie. Sure, you're entrusting him only with $10 million, but I mean, he has the sense, the maturity, the talent to be able to guide these veteran actors, but then also craft a story that is just made really good. I know Kane Parsons is getting a lot of the praise, a lot of the accolades, but I have to say his screenwriter, the Will Sudik, whatever, he deserves just as much as this guy because taking that web series and sort of building it into this thing that taps into psychology, but then also into sort of existentialism and sort of like, liminality and architecture and modernity and a lot of other things. He's crafted a very, very smart movie. Yeah, clearly I would say, I mean, we're here in June right now. I would say definitely one of the best movies so far, at least, of the year. And of course, others. But yeah, this would easily make it to my list so far. So again, if you guys haven't seen this movie, please tarry not a single moment. Head on to the cinema. This is Kane Parsons' Backrooms.